Hey, everybody. How we feeling this Kuma backstory, huh? Yeah, it's filled with a lot of whimsy and wonder, let me tell you. It's just, yeah, you can tell Oda's been sitting on this one for a while. It's just like, yeah, it's going to take a while for me to get to Bartholomew Kuma's backstory, but when we get there, get ready. Get ready. It's going to hit like a truck. It's going to be pretty intense. You know what it was for me? Because every time we see Kuma in the story, there's always indication that, like, oh man, this guy had to go through the ringer. Whatever series of events led to him being a thoughtless, emotionless cyborg for the government, when we're getting conflicting stories about him, you know, his backstory was always so eclectic, because it was like, oh, he was a kind and benevolent king. He was also a revolutionary, but now he's a warlord, and he's a tyrant, and he gave up his humanity to become a pacifista, and now he's a slave, you know, being bossed around by the Tenryubito. So it's just like, how do all these dots connect, right? You know what the moment was for me? It was the moment right after the time skip. I guess not right after. It was when the Straw Hats were heading down to Fishman Island, and Frankie kind of gathers all the crew together, and he's like, hey, guys, if we have a moment to talk, I would rather say something here. So when I returned to Sabaody after 2 years, I went to go to see the Sunny, obviously, and the Sunny was initially protected by, Duval and Hachi, but they got injured. So Kuma, or rather the cyborg formerly known as Kuma, was guarding the Sunny the entire time. And so we see Kuma covered in like moss because he's been sitting there the entire time, but also all battle damaged and like, blades and stuff, arrows sticking out of him. He's been shot with cannons and stuff protecting the Sunny. And then he gets up and kind of like sees Frankie and scans them and is just like, member of Straw Hat crew detected, mission complete. And then he just goes, back to base or whatever. And it was at that point that I realized, like, oh, his backstory, whatever it's going to be, it's going to be intense for him dealing with stuff like that, okay? And that's on the low end of it. If you got a little teary when you saw Kuma all battle damaged protecting the Sunny, that is the tip of the iceberg, and then we just keep moving down. You know what? Before we get into this video, let's just go through and rank every single tragedy that has occurred in Kuma's life. How about we do that? That sounds like a fun time to start off this video. Let's see. Let's just do it on a scale of 1 to 10. I think that's a pretty fair way to do it. Scale of 1 to 10. 1 being not that depressing. 10 being... All right, so let's start. Okay, so at the age of 4, probably the first tragedy that's occurred in Kuma's life is that his entire family was captured and thrown into slavery in Marijois by the Celestial Dragons. So I'm going to say that's a 10. Then shortly after that, his mother died of a disease while a slave. Kuma didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to his own mother. So I'm going to say also a 10 on that one. Then his father, in an attempt to cheer him up and tell him about the sun god and how hope and don't worry, someday you're going to get out of here, he was shot directly in front of Kuma by a Tenryubito. I'm going to say that's also a 10. Yeah, and so then what happened after that? Oh, yeah, they were thrown on God Valley where they were summarily hunted by the Tenryubito for their own sick pleasure in the extermination games. Not even called humans anymore at that point. They're just referred to as rabbits. So that's a tough one, but I'm going to say 10 on that one as well. They managed to get away, and things were okay for a while. They got back to Sorbet. He was a pastor. He helped out the people. But, of course, helping out the people also required him to take on all the literal pain and suffering of all of the townsfolk, not telling them anything, suffering on a weekly basis. That's a tough one, but I'm going to also say 10 on that one. Then, a couple years later, the evil king of the Sorbet kingdom, Bakori, decided I'm just going to split my kingdom in half, and half of it's going to be the lawless land, and we're just going to attack and indiscriminately kill the old folks that live there. So Kuma waged a battle against the army of the Sorbet kingdom, had the shit beat out of him, and then thrown in jail. So I'm going to say 10. Revolutionaries showed up and saved them, and everything was kind of okay for a while once again. It was with Ginny, and they became members of the Revolutionary Army. Then Ginny was captured to become a sex slave by the Tenryubito, and Kuma had no idea what was up with her or where she was at for 2 years. So I'm going to say we're getting to 11 at this point. And then after 2 years go by, he finally gets to hear about what's happening with Ginny. Turns out that she's right about to die, so Kuma goes to her location and gets there too late. So he misses the death of Ginny, doesn't get to even say goodbye to her properly, doesn't get to hear what Ginny said over the Den Mushi, that she actually loved Kuma. So I think we're about up to 20 at this point now. And then shortly after that, you find that Ginny actually had a baby named Bonney. And so things were good for a while. Once again, but then we find out that Bonney, in fact, actually has the same disease that killed Ginny, and it's progressing very fast. It's going to kill her in 5 years, and there is no known cure. And not only that, but he had to, shut off Bonney from the entire world, so not even allowed to go into the sun, because the sun is literally the thing that Kuma worships, but also the thing that is going to kill his daughter. So 30. Yeah, we're up to 30 now, and then let's see, after that, oh yeah, and then Bonney finds out from overhearing from the doctor that she's going to be cured in 5 years. She misinterprets that. So now Kuma has to tell Bonney that, oh yeah, don't worry, in 5 years you're going to be cured no matter what. And so now he has that hanging over his head, that he has to figure out some cure or else Bonney's going to die. So we'll just give that a normal 10. Let's scale that back a bit. So, final score tally. I lost track, honestly, but I think we're over 100. Okay. So, we're not even done yet. We're not even done yet. Because there still has to be a point where Kuma joins the Warlords, and then he signs up to get his body slowly replaced by machinery, and then eventually has his own humanity, memories, and goals, ambitions, everything taken away from him. Even the ability to recognize his friends and family is just all gone. The happy memories he had with Ginny, all that stuff is going to be removed from him, and we haven't even gotten to that point in the flashback yet, okay? So this will be my attempt at kind of piecing stuff together at where we're going to go from here. So currently, Kuma and Bonney are in the South Blue. Bonnie's 6 years old, because at the end of the last chapter, chapter 1098, we skipped a year into the future, when King Bakori was coming back to the island, and he was going to, raze the whole place to the ground, killing every old person there. He holds a vendetta, if nothing else. So, so Bonney is 6, which means there's only 4 years left, actually, at the end of the last chapter, until Bonney dies of her sapphire scale ailment, okay? So, I'm not really sure how the whole situation with King Bakori is going to happen, but I'm thinking that's going to tie in to Kuma being, basically, all the horrible things that Bakori's going to do coming up next, Kuma is going to take the blame for. Now, I don't think he's going to take that intentionally, even though, Kuma has taken on the suffering of a lot of people. Don't think he's willing to do that. I think this is going to be something where the government's going to get involved and basically shift all the blame from King Bakori onto Kuma. Now, why would Kuma allow this? Well, I think we can all kind of see where this is going, at least in this general direction. We don't know exactly what Kubo's... not Kubo. We don't know. It's Kuma and Kubo, so I'm going to probably make that mistake a couple of times. We don't know what Oda is going to do exactly step by step, but you can assume it's going to involve some kind of deal, some kind of ultimatum that Kuma is going to have to make to save his daughter. And that's going to involve some really messed up stuff for Kuma himself, which is going to lead into where he's at right now in the story. Bonney will be cured. In exchange, Kuma becomes a warlord and a pacifista and a slave anew, and gets all of his reputation, even his reputation, even the reputation that he had as a kind, benevolent, caring individual that literally cured the people of the village by taking all of their suffering and disease onto himself. Even his own reputation is going to be taken and thrown into the trash, dragged through the mud, and then thrown into a garbage compactor, okay? Oda is literally going to take everything you can imagine. Not just this, that is what makes this fucking backstory the most powerful. That really is what it makes it. Because it's not just like, I will give up my life for my daughter to live. Now, that would be a huge thing. That would be a big moment, okay? And that's been done in fiction a lot. I can't count how many times it's been the life for a life kind of thing. First thing that pops into my head is Avengers Infinity War. Don't know why that was the first one that pops in my head, but there's a lot of them, There's a lot of works of fiction where, manga, anime, video games, movies, television, books, fantasy, whatever, where it's I have to give my life for somebody else. I mean, what's the first thing that pops into your head when you think of that trope? No. Oda looked at that and he's like, no, not suffering enough. Not enough misery from just a life for a life kind of thing. No. We're not going to kill Kuma. I mean, we are, but we're not going to kill his physical body. That's going to keep moving around as a puppet and a slave for the world government. But we're going to take every aspect of what made Kuma himself and we're going to rip that right out of him. Then oh, well, he still has a kind, benevolent reputation on the island. He's like really nice and he has like altruism and stuff like that. We're going to take that away from him too. So everyone thinks he's this cruel tyrant that basically was this dictator that ruled over the Sorbet Kingdom. We're going to take that away from him too. We're going to take every single positive aspect of this guy's life, everything that he worked for, and just destroy it. Okay? That's the thing. Except for Bonney. Bonney is the one trace of Kuma's past that still exists and still remembers the kind man he was. That's poetic if it wasn't. Okay, so not exactly sure what's going to happen with Bakori, but all of the horrible stuff Bakori's doing, that's going to get pinned on Kuma at some point. Now, Kuma's going to take Bonney, probably very similar to what happened with Law and Corazon. Kind of like, it's like Kuma's going to travel the world, try to find some kind of doctor, or maybe Dragon will keep sending doctors to Sorbet. It's like, I'm sorry, we can't help this. We can't cure the Sapphire Scale. It's just not a thing, okay? We don't have Samuel Tarley here to perform. It's not going to happen, okay? So eventually, though, Kuma's going to hear about Vegapunk, probably through Dragon. Dragon knows about Vegapunk, and Vegapunk at this point is setting up Egghead. It's not a huge, giant future land yet. Like, it doesn't have the Labosphere and the Frontier Dome, but it's a lab that's up and running, okay? And so Dragon's going to put Kuma in touch with Vegapunk, and then Kuma's going to take Bonney to Egghead, because we already confirmed that she was there before. Okay, so they're going to go to Egghead, and Vegapunk's going to, examine Bonnie's condition and be like, all right, Sapphire Scale, Quasar, wow, that's a disease you don't see very often. Okay, now, I've been seeing a lot, from this point onward, I've seen a lot of splits on exactly which way this could go, all right? I've seen a lot of different directions, okay? One of them is also dark. It actually kind of takes away the whole Bonney thing altogether. This Bonney is a clone. A lot of people are like, oh my god, are we still on the freaking clone shit? Yeah, kind of. I mean, like, clones are a relevant point in the One Piece story right now. Can you really blame? It's just like, the Germa are all clones, and then Stussy's a clone, and so Vegapunk has clone technology, and now Bonney and Kuma is there. The Seraphim are basically clones. So, yeah, there's a lot of clone stuff right now in One Piece, but that is one angle to take it, where essentially Vegapunk, because Vegapunk is... he's not a medical doctor. I mean, but I guess he did perform surgery to slice his head off. But then again, Frankie is not a medical doctor, yet he was able to rebuild himself from scrap metal and make himself into a cyborg that runs on soda. So, it's like Frankie would need to have top-level surgery skills to make that work, and he clearly doesn't exhibit those in the story. So, it is what it is. It's One Piece, right? So, what if Vegapunk could be like, all right, Kuma, well, here's the thing. Unfortunately, I can't do anything for Bonney. I can't cure the Sapphire Scale. It's already afflicting her. I can't do anything about that. But what I can do is I could take her DNA and I could remove the gene for Sapphire Scale, because it's something that maybe affects your DNA, your chromosomes. I don't know. I'm not a biologist, but something in there. Right? It's like I can genetically remove that on a lineage factor DNA level. I can remove the Sapphire Scale from that DNA code, and then I can clone Bonney without the Sapphire Scale. All right. Now I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think that's the situation. But Vegapunk does know a lot about the lineage factor and whatnot. So, but let me say that I don't think that's the case. Could he have done that though? Absolutely. That might have been an option on the table, though. That might have been a thing that Vegapunk brought up. He might have been like, all right, Quasar, this is going to be really tough to cure this disease, but what I could do very easily is I could just clone Bonney without the disease, and then you just start all over again, I guess. And maybe Kuma was like, no, that's not what... So my daughter still dies at the end of that. That's not good. So it is like, all right, okay, sure. So that was one option on the table. I just wanted to bring that up there. Okay. Now, another way to do that would just be, without getting clones or anything involved, or maybe, artificial organs or something, because Vegapunk does have those on the island and stuff like that, like the organoids and stuff like that. It might have been a situation, because this disease, whatever the disease exactly is, the true nature of Sapphire Scale. By the way, I'm going to make a video all about the diseases of the One Piece world, because I think we have enough to talk about. I think I have enough to make a solid video about. I mean, we got, the Kestia disease that Nami had way back at Drum Island. We have Amber Lead, obviously. Scurvy. Scurvy's in One Piece. We have that. We have all of Queen's artificial viruses and stuff like that. So I think I might do a video, just a generic video about diseases in One Piece. Now we have Sapphire Scale. So it was transmitted very likely to Ginny via sex. It was like a sexually transmitted disease, okay, that she got from a celestial dragon, possibly. Maybe Saturn, because people have been saying that Saturn connects to sapphires, like the planet Saturn has connections to sapphires and stuff. And also, we know Saturn now is some eldritch god mythical zone kind of devil being. So maybe that if like a human, it's just like it's not compatible, so like some horrible disease will affect any human that like even like touches Saturn or anything like that. It's possible. Also kind of explains why Bonney was like so enraged, like Saturn, it's like I'm gonna kill you, and so there's other ways Saturn can come into this, but that might be in fact the celestial dragon that requested that Ginny become his wife or sex slave essentially. But anyway, the point is this disease is genetic and is part of Bonney's lineage factor. This is not something that can be easily cured with just medicine. Even like Chopper or Dr. Kureha maybe would have difficulty curing this. Dr. Kureha probably has a pretty good chance just by virtue of being Dr. Kureha, but maybe you need somebody more like Law or more specifically Vegapunk. That might be what Oda's going for too, because it's like, all right, you're dealing with situations now that are beyond just like a physical ailment like Queen's viruses and stuff like that. You're not dealing with a virus, you're not really dealing with bacteria or like a fungal infection or like those kind of diseases. You are now dealing with something that is coded into your DNA, that is part of your lineage factor, okay? That is part of like a birth defect kind of is to have sapphire scale, okay? In which case, the only way to cure that would be to do something with your lineage factor, with your genetics, okay? And that's technology that even like we're at right now, we kind of struggle with. It's like if you're born with a particular disease, there might just be nothing we can do about that. You know what I mean? But Vegapunk is Vegapunk, and he's like super advanced. So, with the technology that he has, if he's able to clone people, which cloning has been a thing for a while at this point, even during the flashback, like the Mads back when Vegapunk and Queen and Judge and I guess Stussy were all working at Mads back in the day, they were able to like clone stuff and things like that. So, maybe not necessarily make a clone Bonney and then just give the clone Bonney to Kuma, maybe nothing like that. But like I can take some, the genetic code of Bonney and then make like false, skin or something like that to like replace the skin that's on her face or something like that, remove the afflicted area. I think a factor here is going to be that the disease hasn't spread throughout her whole body like it did with Ginny. With Ginny, it seemed very rapid. In less than 2 years, it just spread all over her body, like basically a very high-acting like skin cancer, and it killed her. Okay, Bonney, in the reverse of that, she only has a small part of her under her right eye on her face that has the scales, and we know that being exposed to the sun greatly increases it. So that's why Ginny's condition, was hastened as much as it was, because she had to be under the sun in order to travel back to Sorbet in the south, okay? So I think that's going to be a factor, but even if, like, I don't think it's going to be as simple as just like, oh, I could just go in there and remove the scales and then replace it with like a skin graft or something, and then you'll be fine, Bonney. Like that condition is still in her DNA. So you're going to have to do something to fix that, right? So I don't know exactly which direction Oda's going to go with it, but Vegapunk will be able to cure the disease. Let's just leave it at that. Vegapunk will have some method to cure the disease, but then Saturn's going to get involved, because Saturn is the god head of scientific defense. So he's the one that's kind of in charge of Vegapunk and Egghead and any scientific development that comes down the pipeline. That would be Saturn, okay? So Saturn might get word of this. He might get word that Kuma is there, who, by the way, is a revolutionary at this point and is very well known as a revolutionary at this point. And so Saturn, it might be like if Saturn was the one that is like actually Bonnie's father, then it might be something that's like super freaking vindictive for Saturn to just be like, you know what, I took away Ginny, I'm also going to take away Bonnie's foster dad, Kuma, you know what I mean? I'm going to remove everything from him. I'm going to turn him into a mindless cyborg for the government. We could use his strength. I'm going to use the Revolutionary Army's weapon against them. That might be something like that from Saturn's perspective. It's just like, man, I'm evil. It might be something like that. So the deal might be like Vegapunk is all ready to perform the surgery or whatever magic science, or not magic, it's science, whatever science he's going to do to cure Bonney. And then Saturn gets involved and he stops the whole system. He stops the whole situation. He's just like, listen, Kuma, I'm going to make a deal with you. I will allow Vegapunk to cure your daughter, okay? But in exchange for that, you're going to become a warlord. and you're going to do what we say, and you're going to have Vegapunk operate on you. We're going to turn you into a mindless pacifista, essentially, over time, slowly. And so Vegapunk would have, of course, object to this, but I don't think Kuma would. Kuma would not object to that. I think Kuma would be like, he wouldn't be happy about the situation. Well, he would be because it cures his daughter. That's like paramount for Kuma. Ginny's memory and Bonney's well-being is paramount in Kuma's mind above all others, even his own life. So Kuma would be like, I will accept that deal as long as you promise to honor it. You know what? I just realized Saturn is essentially this, like, he really is kind of like a devil, like straight up, like an actual devil with like the magic circle and like the black lightning and everything. Oh, I'm a devil. What if Kuma made a literal deal with the devil? He made like the Faustian deal, kind of. Not really the Faustian deal, but he made a deal with a devil. So like signed a contract kind of situation where Saturn has to uphold his end of the bargain, but Kuma has to uphold his as well. So that might be the reason why there might have been something along the lines where like, okay, tell you what, I'll sign up for that, but Bonney gets cured and she gets to go free. Because if Bonney is the child of a celestial dragon, if she is Saturn's child, that's going to have complications because the government, is obviously going to be looking for her and everything. But Saturn is like, Saturn, you promise me she'll get to be free. She won't be a slave under the Tenryubito. And so maybe that's, if we are getting straight up magic into it, that might be how Bonney escaped Akainu. Because there was that scene right before the time skip where Blackbeard captured Bonney, and then Akainu showed up, and Blackbeard got out of there, and so Bonney was there with her crew, and so Akainu was there, and he's a freaking admiral, and he's just like, oh, okay, you're coming with us. And so Bonney somehow managed to escape that. I've always wondered, like, I guess she used her ability to, like, sneak out of the cuffs or something, but how the hell did Bonney get away from Akainu? How did she get away from Akainu? What if it is some weird magic deal with the devil kind of situation where Saturn was like, fine, I will promise you Bonney will be cured by Vegapunk and she will never be a slave under the Tenryubito. In exchange, you become a warlord, pacifista, all that, and give us her memories and everything. And Kuma's like, fine. And then they make a deal, and then the contract happens or whatever, okay? And so now, because the twists of fate happens, if you could change your fate, Bonney could. And so now, even if it's a situation where Bonney is about to be taken back from the government, like fate or like luck itself shifts, and she's able to escape every single time. Not unlike the way that the sun god fruit always gets out of the grasp of, people, trying, like the government trying to get it back to Marijois. There's definitely some kind of mystical, magical undertones going on in One Piece here, where there's like forces beyond the reach of humans, okay? Like, yeah, so if like magic and stuff actually exists and things like that, and that might also be why Saturn was like, oh, what are we gonna do about Bonney, sir? And Saturn was just like, don't worry about her. She's just a child. Who cares? It doesn't matter. And then Bonney goes up to attack Saturn. What if the only reason Bonney was able to like attack Saturn like that was because basically Saturn made a deal to give Bonney like ultimate freedom? Like she could never be turned into a slave, and then she will always be, she will never be under the control of the world government, okay? And maybe Saturn made the deal because he didn't think that like Bonney will never be a threat to us. She's just a child, whatever. And so he got stabbed, and yeah, it doesn't hurt Saturn or anything like that. The wound just closes immediately. But if it's a situation where Saturn like literally cannot, like, I already made a deal, so I can't, like, well, he is crushing her currently right now. Maybe, that's the whole point of deals with the devil, is that they get you on the details kind of shit. Like, all right, I promise that Bonney will never be a slave to the world government, or never be imprisoned by the world government. So I'm just going to grab her and kill her, yeah, that might have been a loophole, you know what I mean? So now we're going down the magical contract angle with it. That's more of just if we're getting Saturn involved, which I feel like Saturn would definitely get involved. Even if Saturn is not Bonney's biological father and had nothing to do with the whole Ginny situation, Saturn is still basically Vegapunk's boss. So I feel like Saturn is going to show up no matter what. Even if it's not a magical contract with the devil deal, it might just be a normal deal of like, all right, I'll allow Vegapunk to cure your daughter if you become a warlord for the government. And Kuma agrees to that. And he's just like the honor system, but Kuma goes ahead with it because it's his daughter's life. It might be something like that. And then Bonney just really did get really lucky. Like her crew helped her escape to Akainu. Have no idea how they managed to do that because they don't really seem that strong, but they managed to get her away or whatever. And yeah, so that's the situation. Let me know down below what you think about how Bonney is going to be exactly cured by Vegapunk, how Saturn's going to fit in all this. I feel like Saturn will get involved no matter what, because once again, in the present, we're dealing with Saturn, but in the past, I think he was also there. And then Kuma rejecting his memories and everything like that was probably part of that deal that he made with Saturn, magical or not. All right, so yeah, there you go. I hope one of those things is like I'm throwing darts at a dartboard. One of those things might stick, right? I guess we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching signing out. Later, everyone.